Hello, my name is Christopher Donald. Welcome to my channel, and I'm going to be doing a demo on making a, let's see, which one am I going to do right now? A pitcher. I'm going to start with a pitcher. Um, so pitchers are interesting for a couple of different reasons. One is that often pitchers are one of your first opportunities to be shaping the clay on the wheel rather than just pulling it up into its form and kind of you're done. So there's different stages of learning how to throw. At first, you're kind of struggling to just get height and to control it, and then bit by bit you learn that all these cylinders that your teachers have been telling you to throw. The point of it is to have enough material and have it divided in the wall where you need it in order to then create shapes. If I can't accurately pull up a cylinder and say keep the middle thick or the bottom thick or whatever part I need to be thick, I often can't make more complex shapes like a pitcher or something that's going to have a lidded form or anything like that. So that material control is what you're trying to learn earlier in the process. And pitchers are a great example of that because you have to control both the material in the wall to get what you want and the material and the rim in order to be able to do a spout. So let's go ahead and get started. I stuck down the very edge of this first to help make sure this lump is stuck down well. And then I stick down the lump and then I push the clay back down. I can actually slow my wheel down a little bit here and there. I try to use as little water as possible, and that's partly why sometimes I can actually stop the wheel head, which I can do on a Brent too. I've stopped the wheel head on a 1.5 horsepower wheel as well. This wheel's not special. Stop any wheel. All right. Opened it up, compress the floor. If you need a review of these parts of the process, watch my videos on throwing a cylinder and centering, and I go into this in much more detail. Compress the floor. Now I have a second opportunity to center the coil if I need to, and I'm going to go ahead and just do my first pull. And I'm going to keep material at the top. I do that kind of routinely anyway. I don't thin rims out until I'm ready to thin them out. But for this, I'm definitely going to keep that. Slow my wheel down a little bit. So for my second pull, I spend some time at the bottom and make sure that I'm getting underneath the clay. By the way, this is 2 pounds of clay, which for me means I can make something fairly large. Really rare in production for me to throw things beyond 5 pounds. 5 pounds, you're getting into some enormous stuff. Bigger than that, and you're talking like salt crocks, like massive forms. But most things are thrown, honestly, from like a 3/4 of a pound to 3 pounds is like 90% of what we did. And this is 2 pounds. You can see how big I am already on this. And each time I'm making sure that I'm getting enough underneath and pushing up that material that's at the bottom. Now I'm thinking about my wall thickness and not wanting to let that bottom part get too thin. So more or less the thickness I want, thicker than what I want, more or less the thickness I want. This form is also going to be one of the first times I'll need to think about collaring. So collaring, I think of as being it's a difficult one. When you're first throwing, you're going to collar a lot. So collaring is when the top gets wider than you want it to, often because you're dropping your arm and your wrist is kind of pushing the top open. So you have a hard time holding your arm perfectly vertical, and so the top tends to open up. Or for me, when I'm throwing a certain size mug that's supposed to be smaller than my hands, I have to throw the mug so it's kind of open on the top, and then I close the top up before I finish the mug, because my hands just won't fit inside the cylinder. So that's when I do most of my collaring. But a lot of you are just going to keep having the top open up on you. You can't really control it, and so then you have to bring the clay back in order to get the size that you want. My advice and what I encourage my students to do is to try and not collar unless you absolutely have to. Try and get in the habit of controlling the clay and keeping it vertical and keeping it at this diameter that you want, because collaring it's an easy one to get lazy. And what you're trying to learn is that control of your material, and you're not trying to learn how to collar. You do need to know how to collar at some point. And some of the forms I'm going to be doing are that kind of thing. I'm going to be doing a bottle demo. I'm going to do an enclosed form demo. Those all require collaring. And it's part of regular throwing, but it can be a crutch. So just be a little bit cautious of that. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and do my final shaping here. The first step of this I will do with a sponge and with a wet inside. And make sure you feel it. If there's not enough water in there, I'll wipe water on the inside. And I'm going to finish up my foot, push that in, and then I left more material here in this part of the wall so that I can push out the wall. There we go. I'm pushing it out by hooking my finger. So I'm kind of bending my finger, and that's helping to push that material outward. From this point, I'm not going to use a lot of water anymore. I'm going to go ahead and compress the curve here for my foot. This is what I would consider a false foot. So it's actually the wall that is more or less forming the shape of the foot, and it really has a flat bottom. So there'll be no trimmed foot on this. This is acting as the foot. Then I'm going to go ahead and compress my wall. Go ahead and wipe my hands off. You'll see that I clean my hands pretty often when I'm throwing, and normally when I'm throwing I have a larger bucket of water and a big cleaning sponge, and I'm just always washing my hands off. That's because clean hands are going to slide, water is slippery, wet clay is sticky, and I want my hands clean so that they aren't sticking to the pot. And go ahead and compress this wall. Meet up with that curve there at the bottom from the foot. There we go. Okay. And now I want to use just clean, dry hands. Get down at the level of this pitcher and really look at that shape. Make sure that the final shape, and I'm just going to adjust it with my fingertips. No more water at this point. Oh, the only thing that will make me put water is if my fingers start catching on the inside and chattering. Then I need to put a little bit of water. There we go. So I'm going to do my final shaping with just clean, dry hands. And now this is actually collaring. What I'm doing here, pushing it in, but it's a very controlled collaring. Just using my fingertip to force that clay in. And it's because I want to have a nice neck on this. And then I want to leave that thicker edge. And the reason I want to leave that is because that's how I'm going to make my spout. So we're going to do a pulled spout. I'll use a piece of wet chamois, wet leather, to kind of compress this. There we go. Now I can come and make sure that this part is the way I want it. It looks good. Okay, I can turn off my wheel. Now, a lot of times I would leave this, at least for that to kind of dry, just a couple of minutes and grab a cup of coffee or something, and then come back and it'll be dry. And we're going to go ahead and push through and not do that. So I'm going to support the lip with my finger and thumb, and then I'm going to pinch this. And I'm looking to kind of like raise the material a little bit in an even way. And so hopefully you can see it's now coming up. Excuse me. So by pinching it, I'm thinning it, I'm tapering it like this towards the edge, and it's going to end up coming up in a little bit of a curve. Then while I'm supporting it, I'm going to pinch the clay between my thumb and forefinger, and I'm going to pull this. So I'm squeezing as I pull towards the edge, and that's going to stretch the spout out and taper it. I want it to be a tapered wall. So it should be thicker at the base and thinner at the edge. Then after I've done that, I can come in and put in, if I want, a throat. Reaching down in and just kind of pushing that clay out with my fingertip. Then as I get back to the edge here, I can kind of shape that spout, and that is done. So the advantage of doing a spout like this is that, one, I have a nice sturdy rim. This is a kind of a classic tavern pitcher design. This is great for something that you need to actually use a lot. It's going to be less likely to get chipped on this edge when it's washed. I have a little bit of a throat, which is going to funnel the liquid towards the spout. The spout is not lower than the rim. It's a little higher than the rim, which aesthetically looks really pleasing. And the edge of the spout has been thinned a bit. Now, once this is leather hard, I would want to take, and actually I can do a little bit of it right now. Usually I'll kind of push this a little bit. It's not too bad at this point. I'll also, as I pick this up, it'll push it back into being round. It's ovaled slightly from me pulling that. But once it's leather hard, I'll come with a tool and I'll kind of just make sure that this edge is nice and clean. I don't want to do it at this point. It's too wet. It's too soft. You try and clean this up now and you're just going to mess it up. So leave things for when it's appropriate to do those steps. I'll go ahead and cut him off. And as I said, I'll pick this up, but I'll pick it up holding, it's been squished into an oval at the top here. So I'm going to put my hands on the long part of the oval. And then that way, when I pick it up, I'll push it back into its correct shape. There we go. And now it's round again. Walk him all the way around to where he needs to sit and set up. All right, now since this is essentially aimed at just the throwing portion of this, I'm not going to really get into putting a handle on that or doing any of the other finishing. There isn't anything that I have not shown in other videos. Generally, traditionally, those would get a pulled handle, and you would do that when it's leather hard after you've cleaned up the spout. So, all right, well, thanks for joining me, and make sure you subscribe. You'll get to see when I have new videos posted up, and there's going to be some more. I'm going to have a video on enclosed forms and a video on bottles, where we'll talk about collaring a whole bunch, because you collar like crazy for bottles. So if you like collaring, that'll be your video. All right, so see you back here soon. Take care. Bye.